We will start. Do you guys have any specific topic you guys want to discuss on? So have you guys seen the agenda which is already being shared? I'll share my screen. Just a minute. Yeah. So apart from this, if you guys have anything in particular in your mind which you guys want to discuss on, please bring that ahead.
Like it can be absolutely anything with or without the agenda we have in mind right now. Absolutely anything which comes to your head.
Sharad this side. Have any one of you used a workbox for service workers?
Yeah, I
So,
have used, yeah.
okay.
Okay. Can we have a bit of discussion in case time permits at the last timing? In case
Sure.
time permits.
Sure,
So actually, basically, I work for Walmart. So we were currently catching up into PWA space. So we were just exploring some APIs that or some tools or APIs out of the box that we can build up. So I just came across Workbox today. So I just thought of including that in the conversation in case time permits.
Okay. Okay.
Sure. So do you have something specific to discuss about workbooks, or it's like a whole generic thing that you want to discuss about?
No, actually, actually, I was thinking whether do I need workbox out of the box or
Sure.
I can do away without workbox. So actually, it was very abstract.
All right.
Okay. Anyone else want any specific topic?
So
one thing I want to say that if we can discuss about various strategies that various strategies of server-side rendering that people use.
So, yeah.
Sometimes people cache on the data, like how they handle dynamic data in case of server-side rendering, and there are many ways of doing that. So
we were trying to cover that on last meeting, but it went like more than 2 hours. So we thought like this classic implementation of SSR would cover some of things you asked. We'll see like if today, if in this one we can cover it. Otherwise, we were planning to have it as a one topic on itself.
Chalega, yes, cool.
So, hey, Adarsh here. So I wanted to discuss something on above the fold rendering. So I've always heard about it, but I don't know exactly how it can be done because it depends on the screen sizes, like for the various devices. So how to do that and some bit about it.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be talking about this as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks.
And one thing that I wanted to also discuss is that there are some features that are in React, like the suspense that React provides, are not supported out of the box from React server-side rendering. So what makes those kind of features in server-side rendering?
Sure, so we will try to talk about this as well. Suspense support for SSR, right?
Yes, not makes it like difficult, or what is difficult internally to implement.
Yeah, Amir, your voice is really breaking a lot, yeah, while you're on the call.
You can type on chat if. Okay. Anyone else have anything on?
Can we talk about some SEO things, search engine optimization with server-side rendering?
Yes, definitely. We are talking about that as well. It's a part of agenda.
Okay.
It's like need for SSR,
that would be good for me.
Cool. So this we kind of covered on the last topic, the last meetup we had regarding like what enables React to be supported on multiple platforms. How React can be rendered in different platform, right? So anyone want to throw some insight on that? Why React works with a cross platform? And you guys must have used React and React DOM. So what React is and what React DOM is?
Yeah, so like I have read it like React has two parts. One is the reconciler part and the renderer part. So like yeah, so like we have React VR, or whether it's VR or it's mobile or this browser. So for that the renderer part is platform dependent. So for that we can create different renderers, even if it's IoT. I think I also found that there is something in IoT also in React. Like I searched one. I don't know it's useful or not. So like it's put into a platform dependent, and the reconciler thing, like the actual the diff algorithm and what are the updates to be made, that's done via the reconciler part. So that's common for all of them. So only we need to make changes in the render to according to the platform.
Yeah, someday I believe like there will be React renderer for games. There are already for like a canvas thing. 3JS is there, React 3 is there. I'm sure people will build game with React as well. So yeah, I'll just give a little bit of recap on what we discussed last time. So if in React, you basically write a component, you write a component in JSX, and then JSX is transformed into create element syntax. And create element syntax are just a function which gets a parameter of like the type of element you are passing. So in this case, it will be div, all the props you are passing followed by all the children's. And then during the runtime, the create element function returns object, which we call bdom, which will have this property called type and all the props you pass there. And the props will have the children, and the children would again be an object. And it can go like a nested hierarchy. So this is basically just a data structure which the component returns. The main React libraries takes care of, and then it's a renderer's job to translate this object to the native elements where you are trying to render React component. So in a DOM, this object would be converted to actual DOM elements. In server, this would be probably you would be converting it on string, which you can serve on the client. And for mobiles, it would convert this object to native elements. So this having a data structure is something which that VDOM thing is something which enables React to support multiple platform, and that is how we can do the server-side rendering as well. So, Shyans, you have anything to share on like the server-side thing?
Right. So I think so. For this discussion, let's do one thing, right? Let's. So you started with the React renderers. Like we'll be moving on to client-side rendering, right? And then we'll introduce server-side rendering as, I would say, a performance boost, one, of course, right? And two, as an exploitation of some primitives which give us the ability to make the application a little more responsive on on high latency connections. Right. And then we can also include some other ancillary discussions stemming along the line of, I think so caching was one of the things which we wanted to discuss.
Yes.
So let's start with CSR, and then we'll slowly sort of transition into SSR by realizing what problems there were.
Yeah, sure. So this client-side rendering is very straightforward, right? Everyone have written this. So you import React, you import your component, and then you basically do React DOM.render your component. You might be creating some store as well, and you provide those stores through component, and you render on certain container DOM element. Now, this is good. In a lot of application, the client-side rendering works. So can you guys tell me when you request a page, on a client-side rendered application, what are the steps which happens? Anyone want to?
So I can
Yes.
take a dig on it. So whenever a page is requested, this React, as you explained in the previous step, the whole virtual DOM gets created, and then that virtual DOMs get reconciled with the actual DOM that is there as React travels to the component hierarchies. If any component React sees that there is a difference between those components, the whole hierarchy below that component will be inserted into the actual DOM, whichever the queries, whichever container we mentioned in the React DOM render function. Below that, it will be inserted as it is, wherever React sees the difference.
Yeah, and before that, before even coming to like rendering a component, the first thing would be loading all of your assets, right?
Correct,
So you have to load your JavaScript, you have to load the React library itself, load CSS, and then you start React DOM.render thing. So, and also not just the asset, you have to make API calls to get the data for a certain page to display that page. So there are a lot of things which need to happen to show a page to a user. And the duration for doing that work would be very long. So how, what are the things that people try to solve that particular thing, like to improve the perceived experience whenever a user first load the page? Kamlesh, you?
Yeah. So one of the possibilities is basically you start rendering your skeleton, which doesn't really need your JavaScript. So it's like whatever. So the first HTML page that you send to the user, right? So that basically has your script tag or your actual bundles or chunks, right? But before even those gets loaded, one of the practices is like you in that HTML itself, you render certain parts, which basically shows the layout of your application. So the user knows like how your application is going to look. And then later on, when the JavaScript bundles or your or everything which is necessary to boost your application, once they are into place, the skeleton gets replaced with your actual application.
So in this skeleton approach, how do we get the first skeleton this is where your service worker comes into play, right? Like
right.
So usually the skeleton also is part of your HTML, which has all the CSS put in the head. So you don't really need to download those things. It's like just there. And then you also pre-cache it by your service worker.
So Kamlesh, I had a question on this. Usually this skeleton thing works very well with like an e-commerce site where there aren't much different type of layouts. You have few layouts which you can load skeleton for, but for certain type of product where layout changes for different pages, how we solve that particular thing?
So yeah, I mean, at least so even for e-commerce, right? It has let's say if there would be certain things that you would be controlling based on a user's authentication or authorization, right? So the layouts are not really static. So one way of it, one way of doing it is like let's say if I talk in terms of a listing page, right, which a normal all the e-commerce website has. So, but that listing page could also vary, right? Based on, let's say, if you are let's just take an example that if you are a preferred or let's say, Amazon Prime customer, right? So if you're a Prime customer, they might tweak the layout. One of the things that you could optimize is at least few of the part, right? So when I talk in terms of skeleton, it's basically your layout or structure of your application, let's say the top bar, the bottom bar, those things would at least remain static, right? So instead of like, you have to still deal with the layout which is going to be rendered in the center, which is your listing, but at least your top navigation bar and the bottom navigation bar would be consistent across, right? The content could vary, but the skeleton is like just to show some placeholders that, something is going to come over here. So at least it gives it's still better than showing spinners.
And for the middle content as well, we can have some logic for URL based, right? Is there any approach which people follow?
So it's basically again URL based. So I was just taking an example of listing page. So listing page still, the actual layout could vary, but at least it would have, your design philosophy would at least have that you're following cards or you're following direct data, right? So so it's basically, if I connect it with server-side rendered page, it's basically all your URLs have a dynamic HTML which is being generated by a server, right? And that itself dictates what are the components of that skeleton HTML.
Yep.
Let's say, so that's basically the power that we get with the server rendered page, versus it becomes tricky if you just have one index.html and you're just serving that. Then the whole HTML page becomes very, conditional based rendering.
Yeah. So now with the client-side rendering, a lot of people think that we don't need any node servers. We can just have a site generator, and we can use that to render the site and everything.
We can just have what?
We can just have static generators, static site generators, and we can do all the work on the client side. Does it work well with products?
I'm still not sure or not yet convinced with that approach. Maybe I haven't tried it fully, but to me, the static site generators are basically that you have basically defined their layouts of your page. Now the content would vary based at your runtime. That's where the whole crowd of Jamstack is going to, right? So, but I'm still not sure how would you do it. Let's say, so if I take an example of an e-commerce website, right? I would say, show me shoes or a category in a particular city. There might be a case, right? Now, how would you basically generate these pages with your static site generator?
Yeah, it's very hard to, actually people say like, okay, we can generate n cross n combinations, but then people spend a lot of time figuring out like what page you have to serve for a given URL.
Yeah, because it becomes more trickier in a terms of, let's say if I talk in terms of Tribo, right? I have hotels in Bangalore, then I have hotels in localities, right? I don't even have my URLs fixed. Those are also being generated on the go, because hotels in Bangalore is like a city, right? The slug is a city. Now I cannot generate a static page at build time. So the slug comes at runtime, and based on that, my node server knows what or how the structure of or a layout of a page should be. Now, if I try to put this everything inside at my build time, it becomes very complex. I don't know how much longer my build time is gonna take like.
Yes.
Because it also constrains your marketing people, right? So let's say if a marketing team came up with a new slug that's not even there. Now, if you had, what you have to do is now you have to trigger a build which encounters this use case. So I'm not sure about those cases.
So I think that the whole thing of Jamstack is good for blogging and stuff. Like the people are using Gatsby for blogging, and like we see it, we have blog, and what we do is that there are Netlify bots. So I have my blog deployed on Netlify, and every time I update it, it just compiles each and everything, and it makes a commit on my GitHub, and whenever I make it, and
So what you're talking about is actually a continuous integration and deployment pipeline. It's not exactly the problem we're trying to solve. That is one of the tools which you may use to automate deployments, which is a completely separate topic in itself. What is being, I think, so discussed here is predeterministic rendering on non-deterministic parameters.
Yes.
Right. And one of the solutions are, Kamlesh, Sudhanshu, I think so you're sort of the experts on this. One of the things which I can think of, at least when it comes from an operations point of view, is rewriting the URL to something the front end would understand inherently.
Okay.
Right. Like, for example, you said that you have a dynamic on the spot, on the fly generation for your slugs. Right.
Yeah.
However, if I have like a layer 9 forward proxy or a layer 7 forward proxy, I can very easily parse that entire URL and give you exactly the data you need to render whatever content you have, be it SSR or CSR, whatever it may be.
Sure.
So that would also entail that I don't have to redeploy everything every single time something changes from the marketing perspective. All I may have to do probably is follow a well-defined pattern within indexing of a database. And this is a problem which is very easily solved. So we used to use this on enterprise applications way back in the day for forwarding parameters to the front end, specifically SSR front ends. So this may be something of interest, when it comes to non-deterministic key approximation algorithms.
So I'm just a little bit confused here. Where does we know about, like, let's say I'm hitting a URL with a slug. What layer we will be knowing that that a particular slug belongs to particular a hotel name or a place.
Right. So that would be basically, okay, so a forward proxy connects the external hosts to an internal server. Internal server to an internal server.
Okay.
When you request something from a server, right, we automatically capture your URL and that's how we redirect your requests. Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here is that if we have like a specific template, like for example, in Kamlesh's case, imagine it is something like a random ID dash Bangalore dash a random ID dash some locality like Koramangala. Right. So as long as this is dynamically followed, we can automatically split it at the level where we are forwarding the requests, and we can give to you exactly the data you need. So it is only a setting.
So the idea or the problem that me and Sudhanshu were discussing was, so how do you basically, let's say if you are using something like, let's say Gatsby or even Next to generate your static pages at build time, right? How do you even encounter for these n cross n use cases? I mean, it can be handled on your server end. That's like that problem is fine. But our problem is whether we should generate pages dynamically or we should create or we should build it statically. Because let's say whether the things that even Gatsby and Next are going to, right? So static site generator, like what is the boundary line that you put towards?
Right.
I guess Sudhanshu, like this is the thing that we have in mind, right?
Yes, and kind of the server proxy you're saying, it would be like if you have a proxy on like a Nginx level or something, why not just have a node server to serve the page,
So see, this is where sort of the performance issues come in, right? Node, as we know, is single thread. Now, of course, you can run it in cluster mode on n cores, fine. But Nginx is inherently built for things like these. It is inherently a reverse proxy, which allows you to do whatever you want with the request before forwarding it. So what we try to do when we're writing APIs or when we're writing servers, which may be applied, that's why I sort of brought up this point. I'm not totally sure if it will work, but just throwing it out there, is that whenever we build APIs, what we try to do is that we try to do all of the CPU intensive stuff in the reverse proxy. Right. We try to do all the SSL terminations, all the TLS negotiations, everything in the reverse proxy, because that is built in C and C++, which means that it is inherently fast and multi-threaded.
Okay.
Right. So I'm talking about operations like these, like for example, slug resolution, or in your case, as a very quick example would be the shell resolution, that which chunk to sort of, feed first, or like, sort of like a mix between statically generated and then dynamically generated at runtime.
Okay.
So to be honest, it's not a CPU intensive task, right? It's a IO thing basically, or it's like just few checks. It's basically a what you can say, engine or a small code piece of chunk that's basically mapping your slug to your file resolution or your chunk resolution, right? So because anyways, if we are doing, let's say, if we are going ahead and implementing the server side rendering with like using the React, right? We are anyways going to need a node instance on which we are going to run. So the idea is like all my Nginx or my, let's say, load balancer could still do the task of balancing the traffic. But still, like instead of putting the logic of what maps to what, I would still, like, given a scenario this to me, I would still map it on my node server where I'm implementing my React server-side rendering, because it becomes very simple to even debug. Else you don't even know where the problem lies exactly if you have like, multiple hops.
So Kamlesh, I think so that is sort of like a two-ended sword, a double-ended sword, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because see, on one end you get deterministic mapping. So as long as your in parameters are correct, your out parameters will be correct. On the other hand, debugging it is a nightmare.
But by the way, even a lot of people go toward that serverless Lambda servers and all for this particular scenarios. If it is very just like a mapping thing, then probably you don't need like a whole node server. You can do with those, Lambda servers. But if it is much more than that, like which
then yeah, absolutely. No, so my point being that if you want deterministic output from non-deterministic input, then adding something before it is routed to your node front end would technically make more sense, at least to me. That whatever I'm receiving now is being filtered and tested.
Sure.
Okay.
Right. Otherwise, you can just reject the request.
Okay. Yeah, because even your handling your SEO bots and all those things become simpler on something like Nginx.
Precisely. Right. And plus, this also gives you the added benefit of host parameter pollution. Like I'm so sorry for throwing security inside this. Like what a lot of people do is that they try random slugs out just to over intensify your database or whatever persistence layer you have. Right. And this way, Nginx can very quickly drop those connections. So it makes it like
So I mean, to be honest, it's the node server is not going to handle all these things alone. It still has to be beyond a proxy.
Precisely. So why not let's just abuse the proxy a little bit and use it to whatever it can.
Sure.
Okay. To just give a little bit thing on what Yash said. I think that those static site generators would work very well for personal blogs, but on a medium type of level where they have n blogs, I'm not very sure it might work very well. So for a personal blog, it definitely you will have limited number of blogs. So there you can statically generate things.
Yeah.
Now, other problem I've seen on a client-side rendered page is it's very hard to figure out beforehand what all dependencies would be required for that. By dependencies, I mean asset dependency. So when we do this code splitting, right? In a code splitting, you'll have like a a.js, and in that a.js, you tell like what is the next thing to fetch, what next asset to fetch. So you'll be loading b.js or c.js based on some condition. Now, before loading a.js, you don't know that you need b.js for a given page. This problem become much easier to solve with a server-side rendering thing, like because you have already done one rendering phase on the server, you exactly know what is the dependency thing you are loading for a page. Do you have any other anyone have any other solution on the client side rendered page where you can beforehand know this dependency thing other than like manually defining those dependency?
Sudhanshu, sorry, Kamlesh. So Sudhanshu, you just said one thing that to solve this on server, it is easier because server we are able to know dependencies beforehand. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, how we are able to determine the dependencies?
Yeah, so one phase of rendering you are doing on a server side, right? On a SSR application. So for a given route, you will be rendering some component, or you will be matching a route, and for that route, you have to hit on that particular part of a code where logic of a code where you say like A you loaded, and then for a condition, you have to load B. So now
Yeah.
you can keep pushing all this dependency on an array, and then you know that
Okay.
like, for a given page, what dependencies are required.
Okay, I understand. But one thing, like since I haven't done SSR yet, so the question that comes to my mind is again, the sequence will be very similar to what the sequence will be on client-side rendering. Like a.js will be loaded, and then further dependencies. Even if client doesn't know beforehand, it still loads that, and server also does that. So wouldn't it take same time or?
No. So in a client side, what will happen because you don't know about loading B.js or C.js
Right.
before loading A, so it kind of cause a waterfall on loading scripts. So you're like the time to load would be sum of A and B.
B. Yes.
But if you know that beforehand, then you can preload A and B so
Okay.
that they can load on parallel.
Okay. Understood. Got
Sure.
it.
So yeah, I mean, this problem can be solved if you are using service workers, you can basically leverage the pre-caching thing with the service workers. So
Okay.
all the chunks, so it's basically since service workers are part of your Webpack build, right? You at build time, you know what all are the splitted chunks, right? So let's say once your first page is downloaded, it knows what all chunks are there in your application. It preloads all those chunks like off the main thread. So whenever you request, let's say now you are on a page, let's say ABC, and then that ABC now starts loading a.js, right? Now the request would, since service worker would be the interceptor of all these things, it would first check whether it's available in the service worker cache. If yes, it will give it. And then a.js needs b.js. Since it was also a chunk, service worker had already preloaded it. So it will also resolve it. So your actual mean time wouldn't be that much as we are thinking.
But what about the first load? Like a service worker also has to cache everything, right? So yeah, this is same. Like not even service worker, just in case of like a browser as well. The first time you load the page, the assets are not cached on disk. So that time it will be a problem. But next time, probably it would not be that bigger problem.
Yeah.
Uh, I have seen people doing that manual. So Webpack give us a stat in which it tells about what are the dependency tree, and people write a manual mapping of for a given URL, what all dependencies would be there. I haven't seen a lot of automated thing for that. In a server side rendering, it become very straightforward.
So you're saying when we talk in terms of server-side rendering, so on that first page pass, you identify that you're going to render abc.html, which needs a.js, and a.js needs b.js. So since on the server it already has made that pass, you would put it in a some of the global array, and on the you'll basically preload it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess this library called loadable components that precisely tries to do that.
Yeah, a loadable component helps with that. So it has a what we say effect resolver later. So you do a rendering phase first, and then it gives you a array, not array. It actually gives you HTML. What you want to add as a preload meta tag, and then you can attach it on your HTML.
Guys, I have one question.
Yeah.
So, Sudhanshu, you were talking about that on the server side, we can actually, get to know what is the next chunk needed. So, how this decision is being made? So, can you give me one example? Like, I can understand it in a way like, you have some data, which data can be used to create, complete component tree. Okay. Then on that data that is provided to your component, in that you are making the decision, okay, maybe this flag is true, now I need this chunk, or is it something else? So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so most of the time it happens this way, right? Like let's say take a login example. So if you're not logged in, so the login page. If you're logged in, so the landing page. now in your component, you on the route, you might have written this logic like a lazy load login page if the user profile object is not there, and load the landing page if that object is there.
Okay.
So now when you are doing that first phase of rendering, you will hit that particular logic. Like you will make API call, you'll get the user data or you will not get the user data. And based on that, to render it from the server side, you will go across the same hierarchy, component hierarchy, right?
But generally the login will happen not on the server side. Login.
No, but let's say you are already logged in and
you're already logged in. Okay.
You make an API call on the server side to get the user session information.
Okay. Session information. So you are saying that like we have to add that business logic. Okay. So if this is true or this condition matches, then
we
do
do
a preload the next chunk.
Preload in the sense like we lazy load. It's not a preload. We do lazy load, and what all things we are doing lazy, what all things we are lazy loading, we extract that information either using a loadable component and or any custom solution, and then we add it as a preload meta tag, or you can also send it as a preload headers.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will.
So I know about one preload, attribute that we add to the script tags or the and that is there. But when you say that preload and lazy loading are different, so what's the difference? So I can understand, you are on a route and you are about to move to another route on the page. Okay, so that is your preloading or lazy loading. I think that both are same. I maybe
No,
there may be a thin line between that.
So there are two concepts. One is a preload and one is a prefetch. Preload is preloading assets which you require for that given page, and prefetching is a loading asset which you might need for next pages. So
now I remember. It totally confuses. I always forget it. I just have to go back and read it. Good.
Yeah, I'll just post the link to it.
I've read that. It's just that I have to go back and read the actual difference.
One more very interesting thing here for anyone who's familiar with HTTP 2. Instead of preload, you can also do server push.
Yeah.
So preload requests for pages, server push says, all right, this is what you need, use it right away. So that's another very simple thing which you can try in your applications.
But server push would help when you are pushing, like when your first page is rendering. But after that, once your browser router takes into account, you still need those preload things, right?
Prefetch thing.
So you do need those preload things, right? But with the server push, you can actually entity tag definitions.
Yeah.
That now that like basically a state transition observer in a way, that now that I'm transitioning to this committed state, get all of this data.
Sure.
Cool. So any other problems you guys have seen on client-side rendering? Or let's talk about like a server-side rendering and why we need server-side.
Yeah, so I want to add certain things here. So, I have an experience where I have done the server-side rendering. So, so why there's a server-side rendering? Because people go for the, I don't want to show a blank screen to a user for a 5 second or more than 3 second or 2 second. I just want to show something to the user. In that case, we go for server-side rendering because the HTML and CSS is there already ready on the server side. When you make a request, you get the page directly and user is happy. And by the time user start interacting or scrolling down, the other, JS gets downloaded and it's become interactive. That is one thing. Apart from that, if that HTML CSS comes first, it's good for, the crawlers, the SEO, the Google crawlers, which, gonna enhance your SEO. That is one thing. Okay. So okay, so why other people's can add to it. So I just
Yeah. So on the SEO part, this we asked on the last session as well. So why we say like okay, crawlers now can crawl JavaScript rendered page as well. Why we still think about server-side rendering for SEO purpose? Because crawlers can wait for your JavaScript to render your page, and then they start crawling.
But they
I
don't do
guess,
that in Google for some
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
It's
I
really
mean,
weird.
so the SEO for Google is again a black box. It's basically even if so right now even after they enabled or moved the SEO JavaScript engine to the new V8, they still claim that Google does two parts of your page, one with JavaScript enabled and one with JavaScript disabled. The only reason is basically to just see whether you are not trying to fool your audience or your consumers. Because what many people tend to do is on server side, they would render a lot of heavy informative data. But as soon as that page becomes interactive on the client side, that data is like complete opposite. And that's the whole reason, like it's basically a check a Google SEO crawler makes that it's basically a parity check that if your JavaScript is disabled versus your JavaScript is enabled, does your page looks or behave similarly.
Okay. And one interesting thing in last session people mentioned was like for JavaScript rendered page, it waits for like some days. So the overall indexing time also is more.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, when you are crawling just the client rendered page versus the server rendered page. And what you mentioned, right? Like they have to do this check whether client and server is matching or not. So people can't fool people.
Yeah.
So it might be that reason why the indexing of client rendered page takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a few days back also, like I read some like Google article, and there's a good YouTube channel from the Google team only for the SEO purpose. So they have two different strategy for the server-side rendered page and for the nowadays, because most of the applications are one page single page applications, and most of the Java client-side JavaScript have to get downloaded. So for that they have a different strategy altogether. It's get indexed as Sudhanshu mentioned, it gets indexed after some days or some time, whatever the logic is. That's again a black box. But yeah, that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more concern. Has anyone played around with paginated response along with server-side rendering? So the thing is, let's say you have a list of, again, if we talk in terms of e-commerce, you have a list of products, right? There are like a category might have, let's say, 2,000 of products. But to optimize our client-side behavior, what we usually tend to do is, first of all, we paginate the data and we also put it under the virtualized scroll list, right? Now, let's say your paginated data is just for 10 items. Now, if your server-side rendered page is also obeying the paginated 10 result set, I don't know how does your page get enhanced enough to give you SEO juice, because that result set is not enough for you to get ranked higher. Because you might be having, let's say there are two competitors, let's say Flipkart and Myntra, right? Both of them has shoes category, and Flipkart has a huge variety of inventory versus Myntra. So, but the thing is, Myntra is rendering all the results set. They don't have pagination, but let's say Flipkart has paginated. So the server also rendered 10 results set. So because of that, it's getting penalized by the SEO and the ranking is going lower. I don't know, how do you handle those kind of use cases?
Thing called canonical URL, especially for pagination URLs for loading the product. Suppose like in the first URL, say question mark page 1 will display only 10 pages. The question mark 2 displays another 10 products, which is different products. But the canonical URL, you have to set it for one URL. So all the 10 pages, suppose if you have 100 products, you will have 10 pages. So all those 10 pages contained will be linked to only one page URL, which is called something called canonical URL. So you need to
No, I'm not talking about that. So I'm my concern is basically so this problem can be solved if you have multiple pages, right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to say if you're trying to implement infinite scrolling, because nowadays no one does the paginated thing, right? You don't have page numbers. You have infinite scrolling. So the exact question is basically how do you handle infinite scrolling along with server-side rendering?
So I have a wild idea on this. I'm not sure how well that will work. So earlier we used to have these page numbers, right? Why can't we have something similar for infinite scroll as well? Like you can always, based on when you are scrolling, if your list is deterministic, you can always say you are showing a list from this to this.
Sure.
Now, when you can just push your state on the URL. So if you do refresh, you actually scroll to that particular view, scroll to that particular part where you are loading. And on the server side, based on this URL, we can always do, let's say, you have a catalog. First was 1 to 10, and then now you scrolled to 20 to 30. So now your URL says that your last list item was 30. So in a server side, if you again refresh that, you might want to load 1 to 30, and that you can do optimize, like do you want to load 1 to 10 or not? But it will load those elements which belong to the last items. So you'll have a URL which can be crawled.
Okay, so usually, let's say, I mean, when we talk in terms of SEO, right, we basically want the crawlers to crawl our landing pages, right? So let's say you say that category is like, let's say, shoes, and the brand is Nike.
Okay.
Correct. That Nike brand could have, let's say, 2,000 items. So when you type something on, let's say, Myntra Nike shoes, right? The URL the crawler would be myntra.com/shoes/Nike. Right? Now you don't have your params in place.
Okay.
So the server render pass would basically render all your 2,000 lists, because that's how the SEO had crawled it. Now the initial set would be sent to the client. Now on your client, once your client libraries takes up the control, then they would strip off your all the data, but just keep the things which are in viewport, let's say 10 items.
Okay, so one thing I was just asking, does the web crawlers can differentiate between hashes? Like when we are scrolling from like we are doing infinite scrolling, so from 1 to 20, after that when we are going to 22, like we are scrolling going to the 21th item, the hash changes like as an indicator that like it's going to the next page. So will that can also work?
Okay.
So usually,
I have a solution for this. So you don't need your page to be a hint for what page to crawl. You can have a sitemaps. So people do generate dynamic sitemaps based on what all URL can come. And for e-commerce, the case you mentioned, right? Like if those item comes on the bottom of that particular page, so this information will be there on sitemap, and crawler would be able to identify like it has to crawl that particular item.
Okay. Maybe once we meet, we can discuss this in person, because maybe I'm not able to get it completely.
So sitemap everyone is aware of, right? Yeah. So in HackerRank also we have a similar use case. Like so we don't have direct links for all the type of challenge. So for that, what we do, like we dynamically generate sitemaps, and this same case for even Stack Overflow questions or like a Quora. So they have to dynamically generate sitemaps for each of the like we have to generate sitemaps for each of the challenge, so it can be crawled.
Okay.
So there will be no direct entry point from the page, like from a dashboard page to that particular challenge, but that flow can be covered through sitemap.
Sure.
So Sudhanshu, when you are saying it's dynamic, is it dynamic or you have some cron job that is?
Actually, it's not dynamic, it's a cron job. So every time, I'm not sure if it is a cron job or like after adding new challenge, we run this thing. But it can be done with a cron job as well. Cron job should be fine. Like every day you run this and you will get a, I think it is a cron job here.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. Can we not achieve the SEO level on client side, which we can achieve on server side, like using Next.js or something?
Sorry, come again.
Can we not achieve the SEO level on client side, which we can achieve using a server side framework or something? Like
So you're just saying that is it really required to have server-side rendering just for the sake of SEO?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, can we not achieve on client side? Like, is it something like we for only for SEO purpose we do have to go for server side or something?
Yeah. So your client-side pages are also being crawled by your SEO. And again, so as we discussed earlier, it's like the crawlers do a two-way pass, one with JavaScript enabled and one with JavaScript disabled as well. The thing is, it takes a time, like as Sudhanshu was mentioning, that it takes a time for a page to be crawled if it's just JavaScript based page. So I don't know how your marketing team or your sales team would agree to this. I mean, if they agree, I would completely remove SSR.
No, because I actually wanted to know, like, someone did find any difference, like just creating a React app and creating a like Next.js app and just like finding any difference with respect to SEO. So
Okay,
that,
so again, it's basically I mean, it cannot be just a small app that you can make a decision of. There has been cases where adding SSR has drastically reduced the impacted the performance. So it goes both the ways around.
Actually, it depends on the application to application as well.
Exactly.
Some places you don't care much about SEO, like applications where you need user to log in. Or let's talk about Figma app. Why you need SEO there? So a whole client-side rendered page makes sense. Like any has to log in.
Okay.
That data, you don't need a server-side rendering there. You don't need SEO there, right? By the way, I have to add one more point on the SEO. When we talk about SEO, it's not just the search engine crawler. We have to think about other thing as well, like share URL. So Facebook also crawls your page, right? And if it doesn't find those meta tags, then it will not get a proper share URL.
That's because of OG protocols, I think.
Yeah. So, but those OG protocol also on a client-side render, it would be added at very late stage. On a server rendered page, you will already have those meta tag embedded.
Because on your client-centered application, once your JavaScript is basically booted up, then only it would be able to inject those tags into your head tag.
Yes.
Can we talk about the disadvantages of server-side rendering?
Yes, sir. First, any more advantages than we talk about disadvantages? Any other advantage you guys can think of doing server-side rendering? Okay, so I have a point to add on the pursued experiencing only. The thing is like, okay, you get the initial HTML generated from the server side, and people have something to beforehand till the page becomes interactive. One thing we have seen, the time to make a API calls from the client side is kind of a little more, because most of the time our API servers and our client servers kind of are closer to each other. So the latency to make generate a HTML in a server is a little less there on the server side. And also we think about that we are now we have to render a big chunk of HTML versus earlier in a client side we have to render only a small HTML. But the thing is, like, HTML are the best thing which can be gzipped, or like which can be compressed because of repeated tags. So the overall cost of doing server-side rendering is not that big as we think. So we might think like we have to load a lot, but it's not the case. Also, uh, there is a uh, even though we say like we do server-side rendering or let's say client-side rendering, we have to figure out the proper strategy that what we want to load from a server versus what we want to load on the client side. So we need to do a proper orchestration on the rendering thing as well. That is what above the fold rendering thing is, right? That is what all about. Anyone want to add anything on the perceived experience part of it, the server-side rendering?
Like I haven't worked on SSR. I have only worked on client side, but I think, is it like the React bundles, if we are using through SSR, are smaller than when we are using on the client side? I'm not
really
sure. I might be wrong, but I think.
So when you that again can go into your disadvantages as well, because when you are writing your server part, right, now your build process is basically generating your client bundles as well as your server bundles. So the client bundle size wouldn't change. It's basically the server. I mean, you really don't have a server bundle, but yeah, I mean your client side bundle size wouldn't be affected. Yeah.
Yeah, those are independent. Client bundles are completely independent of us, the server rendering thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And anything, any other thing, anyone want to share on this?
I think it's time to now move to disadvantages.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, yes, you go ahead with the disadvantage thing. You
No,
start.
like I don't have much experience with server-side rendering. I was just looking yesterday with Next.js, if you saw my tweet or something like that. And all the experience that I have is just Gatsby, and I don't find much difference, to be honest, because I don't make apps of that skill right now. So someone else might take that.
So the first
100%.
The first one I would say is like server-side rendered page are hard to maintain than the client rendered page. The main reason behind that is like in a browser application, you have just one session versus in a server, everyone shared the same node process. So you can't have any global variables. You can't pass your stores like Redux stores here and there. So you have to pass it through some channel. Um, maybe through context or maybe through some other, like if it is out of React render cycle, you have to keep it outside. And it does become a little bit hard to maintain, and also if the bug comes there, it's very hard to figure out.
Yeah. Another thing I would like to add is you now need to maintain two DOM trees. Like on your client you need React DOM.hydrate and then add your tree. On your server you have your providers and everything which are specifically designed for your server things. If you miss one of, like if your tree is kind of not in sync, your client and the server tree, you basically tend to end up with the whole hydration. Like you don't rehydrate, it's basically it will reboot the whole app on the client.
By the way, if you do React DOM.hydrate, it silently fails. It will. So earlier
it says it says no match. There's no matching
No.
div in div. Some kind of that error, and it will directly reboot the whole application with
No.
Well, now it is far better, I guess.
No, the experience is worse with React.hybrid. React.hybrid expects you to have tree, what you have written on the server side and the client side. If there is change in both, then hydrate is just assigning events. And if it doesn't find those elements, it just silently fails. So here with React.render, it used to re-render if there is a mismatch, but with hydrate, it doesn't happen.
Oh, seriously? Just a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
We are going to talk about what hydrate is, right?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. I think that you should do that first. Like, I don't have any experience with hydration.
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead.
Yeah, there is a one topic only. So before that, the other disadvantage would be
your decision making.
Huh?
Your decision making.
Yes.
So let's say when you're writing a same page that needs to be rendered on a server versus client, like what all things or what all data fetching do you need to put on your server side versus your client side?
Yes, yes. So now that orchestration become a little bit a problem. Like that above fold rendering is does give a very good user experience, but it also increase your decision making thing. Like what you want from server, what you want on a client. So maybe probably whatever thing is visible on the page, you want to load it from server, and thing which comes after is scrolling or something, it comes you can fetch those later. The other part is now a couple of this thing doesn't work. A couple of third-party library are not SSR compatible, so they make assumption about having a window object, and it
Yeah.
I just to add on top of that, it actually makes your life really difficult. It depends from app to app basically, but a little, you just your app grows a little bit, and the complexity starts increasing like exponentially. Now you have to output like as you people said that you have to very cautious about what you are using on the client side code. You can't use Windows, or you can't use window.local storage, or other things. You have to be now you have to think about orchestration of data, where to keep the data, and then you have to now think about caching the data, like every time the request going to the server, and you have to keep that pages ready somewhere. So all these things starts getting quite complicated. Like at least that's my experience I want to add there.
And the biggest problem is React itself is very much compatible with SSR. So not like a suspense and all, suspense, lazy, or concurrent mode. These are not yet server side. Like it's not very straightforward. So that's the reason we are not even we are not able to move from React Router 3 to 5 because React Router 3 have a way to load your data dependency before trying to render your component. It's more of a configuration type, while React Router 4 or 5 they are more like a component.
Declarative, declarative. So we actually moved from 3 to 4. The migration was obviously difficult and very much it was a mental model shift. But yeah, I mean, you are basically able to achieve all the things that React Router 3 provides with the help of obviously loadable components.
Basically, you get the ability to lazy load at the component level. So sometimes it's good, but sometimes it becomes quite scary. You have to have a placeholder for every lazy loaded component. What if this is being lazy loaded and we don't have a placeholder component? The screen goes white and you are like, boom, what happened? And like you have to put all those things.
Yeah, so let's say if you are using some libraries of which is like React loadable or loadable components, like when you are actually exporting your loadable thing, you have like they give you an option to actually provide placeholder. So it's always better to have that as a fallback.
Yeah, on that same line, I just want to tell this doing server side rendering with like again it's a trade off, but doing with these frameworks have done a lot of good work. Like Next.js is a very good framework that can be used to do any kind of server side rendered project. And I don't know other are there any like I have heard about Next.js. Do you people know about any other uh, server-side rendered framework for React?
Not really. Next.js is like killing it left and right.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, again, Next.js, since it's like again a framework, there's a learning curve associated with it.
I think one more thing, like if you are a very small company or have a small need, I think going to for Next.js is way better than implementing
Yeah,
your
so
own
Next.js
SQL.
is basically meant for small projects. If you have like something which is very much you need dynamic parts or you need tweaking of certain things, you are basically kind of stuck, and that's where I guess they are still maturing.
Yeah.
So
I
I mean,
agree on that part. Like Next.js, I can't think of a moving HackerRank
yeah,
on the
not
Next.js.
really.
It,
Yeah,
so first of all, it's a very conventional framework. So you have to
yeah,
follow certain conventions, uh,
yeah,
but they are getting benefit out of that convention.
yeah, yeah,
Like they know the dependency tree beforehand because it is completely dependent on the folder structure.
yeah,
So they do get benefit out of it, but
yeah,
I can't think of like a big project to move on that.
yeah. So
I
it's
have a
like,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have one question. Has anyone worked on certain applications where, some pages are client-side rendered and other pages are server-side rendered, which is controlled by Next.js? So something of that sort. Have you people worked at worked on this kind of application?
We did while migrating from Backbone to React. So that time we had to define some page which would be client rendered through Backbone and some URLs to be server rendered. So we used to created a JSON file where it was like a duplicate logic. So in that JSON file, we used to write a regex for a given route, and that regex tells like a given route is a React route or not. And in a Backbone side on route hooks, we check like before navigating, check if it is a React route, then do a full page reload. And full page reload happens through Nginx, and Nginx knows whether it has to serve from a Node server or it has to serve from a Rails server. So Backbone page used to come from a Rails server, and that so. We had to define this regex at two places, on the Nginx level as well and on the JSON level. So that JSON is shared on React and Backbone side.
So, how do you guys were managing the state management, state management of the application, state of the application when things are happening like, back and forth of like basically like Next.js is and the server side rendering is happening and at the same time your client side rendered pages are also there. How the client
So
state management?
we migrated page by page, and one page actually there was a time where one URL can be a Backbone URL as well and a React URL, and that we were doing A/B testing. So it was a very like a hacky thing we did there. We made it work. I don't want to go on that discussion. But on a simple use case, if you have a page by page transition, so what you can do, like for a given page, the whole logic is written to be managed through server side. So you don't have to worry about like state transition. And whenever you are navigating from a Backbone to React, there will be like a full page reload. So everything will happen on a like all those API call will happen again.
So let's,
This
yes, so sorry to interrupt. I'm really getting confused here. Uh, uh, so let's say if we have a home page where add to cart button, like if I talk about an e-commerce website, like I'm not sure whether can be done there or not. But if there's add to cart button and on the second page a full reload happens, so how that add to cart thing is, the information that one item has been added to cart is being stored, persisted on the second page. You might be taking the server side help in that case. Like,
your session is shared, right? Like you'll have some session token on.
oh, yeah.
And with that, like both server knows this session information. So you might be like, whenever you do add to cart, you must be adding it on servers as well. You must be adding it on like your API calls. So whenever you are doing that, you can share your assets through.
I understood, Sudhanshu. I think, yeah, it's okay. I understood that.
The other problem with SSR would be your page to interactivity time, because now you have some content to see, and let's say you have a button on the top, a CTA button on the top. The user might click that button, and that will become interactive only after certain period of time. So that also hampers the user experience. So that's why we need to do proper orchestration on what to load from a server and what to load on a client side, and how to make things interactive when people see that. So there is a thing like for a different type of content, there would be a different type of interactivity with that. Like for read, like for an article, people have to read that doesn't require any mouse interaction. So that you can that those are best candidate of rendering from server. But if you have a form, and if you display that beforehand, don't do that. Show some different view, and only once your client is rendered, like a client is ready, then render those elements. So there is a little delay between viewing something and interacting something. Any other disadvantage you guys think of what SSR can bring?
No, I guess we got covered everything mostly.
Cool. Yeah, so the jargon, isomorphic application or universal rendering. Anyone have an idea what isomorphic application or universal rendering is? Actually, we have already discussed this.
Yeah, it's a server-side rendering. Your application that works on your server and your client.
Yes, same code.
Yeah.
So if anyone is being asked what do you have work on?
If people put this thing in their CVs, I know how to build isomorphic and universal rendered applications.
Yeah, but it is immensely that like because React can be rendered on both. So you're sharing the same code base on client and server.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about hydration. Anyone want to share what hydration is? What are the types? What are the things you have?
Hydration is in progress.
Sorry. Yeah. So anyone has an idea about the hydration?
Yeah,
Can
so it's
someone tell me
basically
why these guys are very obsessed with chemistry? Like they have electron in React, then they have atom text editor, they have electron. I think that now they have hydration.
Even the React logo is right from it basically says it's basically based on some chemistry concept itself.
Yeah.
There was a very big confusion when React initially came. So people used to think it as a reactive library.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just like a UI library.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So if I want to just say hydration in like a very simple word, it's basically a markup to which you attach your event listeners.
Yes, yes. Earlier, people actually there are two parts which we normally say hydration. One is hydrating data from server on a client side and booting from that particular data, and the other part is hydrating your events. Actually, like attaching events.
Yeah.
So if we see preview. Okay, this is there. So, okay. Whenever on any server-side rendered page, or let's say we'll say the jargon on any isomorphic application, when we hit the server, we basically come to Node Express, Express server or any other server, and in that we create our store. This is very dumb example of server-side rendering, but yeah, it would suffice. So you create a store and then you fill your store, and then you render your application. Now, on a client side, you don't want to, like, you already have this data available. You don't want to fetch all those data again on the client side. So client side probably you want to get that initial data from what you have accessed from the server and create a store out of it. So when you are rendering on the client side, you will have the data available and you will not be making the API call. So this is like a one type of hydration. While I have given a very vulnerable code here, can anyone tell me like what is the problem with this particular line?
Yeah, we are basically not escaping my HTML special characters.
Yes. So if my state have something which looks like this, I can close my script tag, and then I can add another script tag, and I can write any logic into that.
So this is basically vulnerable to cross-site scripting.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. This
exactly.
is issue. And there are different flavors you can different way where how you can hydrate your data from a server to client. One is like you add your store state, you stringify it, and you you add it, you initialize a variable with that. Um, and the second thing is like you can define a script which doesn't execute, and you just pass the stringified version. Then there are other approaches where you add it as a data attribute or something. So, but all of this have the same problem, that if you don't escape, you are you will fall on the this attack.
Yeah. So I guess most of the people, what they also do is like once you stringify, you just put a regex that replaces all the HTML special characters.
But some of the those HTML thing you might want to
required. Yeah.
So the best one is just to escape it, and on the client side, again while parsing, just unescape that.
Yeah.
So Sudhanshu, I have one question. I'm not sure if I fully understood it. So what you are doing is you are generating the complete HTML based on how the React is. So in above this React str is the actual HTML snippet of your application or your page, right?
Yeah, yes.
So, and you are sending it to the client side. Now on the client side, you are again doing that React DOM.render provider again. So if you're sending our page, if you're sending the page already, we are sending the H markup already, why do we need to have do what you're doing here?
Yes. So yeah, come, let's go ahead.
Yeah, so it's basically, again, the thing is, this is one of the disadvantages, that you need to write it twice. The reason that you need to do is, instead of doing a render, we are saying hydrate, because this is a React application, right? Your browser doesn't understand React. So once you have generated a page, the browser needs to know like how to make this page interactive, right? And we have used React. So once you render the whole markup inside hydrate, hydrate assumes that the tree that you have sent, right, it would be a markup to which you attach your event handlers to make it interactive.
Right.
Because if you don't write hydrate and if you just send the page, it's just a HTML page, which is like a static page.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's the reason you need to use the render to string on your server. So it generates a markup, you send it to the client, and then on your client, once the page starts rendering, right, this hydrate function gets called, which basically does the task of attaching your event handlers to the markup.
So, so event handlers, so those event handlers which it attaches, where are those event handlers? Those must be in some static JS file, or like where are those event handlers for any, let's say, button, if there is an action. So where those event handlers reside, they will be in our markup only, right?
Yeah, but the browser won't be able to understand, right, what to do, because in React, you are not, so React has a thin layer which says synthetic events, right? It's not a direct event handlers. So to do a mapping of your synthetic events to your native DOM APIs, you need the React context on your client side as well.
Okay, correct. Yes. Yeah.
That's why you need the hydrate method to be called on the client.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, yeah, you can add it.
Those handlers are mostly a reference, JavaScript reference.
Yeah.
You don't pass from the server render thing. You just pass HTML. So you have to assign those handlers again. So that's why you have to render your whole component again on the client side as well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So yeah, here is something we were discussing, like the hydrate method expects whatever you have rendered, the tree hierarchy would be same what you are doing on the client side. If those tree hierarchy are different, so this is just what it does, like it gets a DOM element from the actual DOM and then attach events on that, right? So if those elements are different, it would not be able to properly assign those events and it silently fails. In a render case, if you just change it to render, if there is a like a different HTML what you are trying to render on a client side, then it will try to fix that particular HTML, and it will kill, like it will just kill the previous rendered thing from a server, and it will try to re-render it again. So that becomes like a performance bottleneck.
Okay. So one more question before we move ahead. So what you're doing is you are importing React temp from ./app, which is your complete component hierarchy in /app, right? So this needs to be exactly same as what we have on the server.
Yep, it has to be same as what we are on.
Okay. You are importing from the same code base. Okay, understood.
And that's where isomorphic your infrastructure. So isomorphic, you can think more of a pattern where you write code where those code are shareable on the client side and server side. So basically, you don't access to window objects on a render phase. You do it on like a component did mount or After Effects, like in a hooks. You'll be probably doing inside a use effect and all. So on the server render phase, on the first phase, you don't make any client or a server specific logic. So same thing is being rendered in server and client as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone have any other question on this? So this is basically the hydration. Now, can you think of like what's the problem with this hydration? We already spoke about one thing, which is your time to interactivity can be longer, and whatever you have rendered, then making those call to action element would take a little longer. So do you guys have any idea how you can fix that?
There are a couple of solutions around partial hydration, but I don't know how reliable they are.
Yeah, the partial hydration is just a concept right now. It's not supported anywhere. But
Yeah.
let's discuss about it. So that is something which would come on future. Let's discuss about partial hydration. How you can now hydration is two things: hydrating your data and hydrating your events. Now, how you can like making your DOM element interactive? How you can partially do that? Just some random ideas would be good, because I also don't know the exact thing what but I just want some brainstorming.
Maybe hydrate to a particular query selector, like if we are aware that which part of our page we want to hydrate, then we can maybe we can change our query selector and get the appropriate element and render it within that container, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any solution right now, or anything through which we can achieve this hydration thing with the current given thing? So, yeah.
Oh, you want to basically touch upon the concept of the streaming?
This. One which would come on a future would be the same thing, like but it has to know about what are the split points, what are like I'm not sure if you are doing code split at a point where React doesn't have a control. It would be able to know like where to hydrate. So if you are doing it through suspense, if you are doing data loading through suspense and like a lazy components. So in that case, React knows that that particular asset hasn't been loaded yet, and
so it will just escape.
Yeah, it will just escape, and once that is loaded, then it will try to run React.hydrate on only that particular piece of that. But that has to be like your library support. I'm sure if so some of the wild ideas people were giving on the last discussion was one, you can write a HOC. In that HOC, what you can do is um, that will be just like a lazy component HOC, and you will attach a promise on that, and till that promise is resolved, you will get the HTML out of whatever is rendered from server. You pass and you render it as a dangerously set inner HTML.
Okay.
And then once the promise resolves, then you re-render your application into that particular thing.
Okay. But you're solving the problem of hydration, but again going into the
Rendering
caveat of re-rendering,
yes,
right?
it will like a kill, like it will remove those elements and it will again add those elements.
I don't know how would that impact the UX.
Probably yes.
Because there could be certain loopholes where maybe if something goes wrong, React is not able to understand it and it will just re-render, right? And at that point of time, it's like there could be a component which has already been re-rendered. It was working, but because of some escape hatch, it re-rendered again. And yeah, but yeah, I mean, this idea looks like kind of convincing.
We kind of did this for to solve one bug we had. We have a problem statements, right? And the problem statement is usually people add those statements. Now we do some sanitization on the server, but on a client side, sometimes what happens, like people forget to close certain tags.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing a server-side rendering, browser tries to autocorrect it, and it renders a different HTML. Now, when you do client-side rendering, then it thinks like, okay, the server rendered content and the client rendered content is different, and it silently fails. So to solve that, for every dangerously set inner HTML, we created this where we actually get the HTML out of the server rendered page, put it back, and then match whatever you are rendering from a client side, then match it, and then render it again. But this work with a dangerously set inner HTML case because it is just like a replacing the HTML. There is no event associated with it, so it works there. But the same concept, I'm not sure if it would be a very good option for partial hydration.
Yeah.
The other approach people said was we could probably do we could probably run react dom.hydrate again on those elements which are not loaded. So on those the same HOC, we will skip on the first phase, and once the data is loaded, we would do react dom.hydrate.
Okay.
But that will again it will create a two different routes, React routes.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has to be framework support only.
Yeah.
And any other wild ideas?
Not on top of my head.
Okay.
Is there a way we know if that React has done the hydration? So on initial load itself, we'll take the DOM from the server and hydrate it, and only then we display.
So you'll say like you're saying like you don't show the content itself.
Yeah, I mean some at least in my company they prefer not showing anything than showing a button which people cannot interact with.
Yeah, but that can be handled in a different way, right? Like in a component did mount, you say, okay, set a state where you say like now app is ready, and in that component state, you'll probably like in component did mount, you set a state, and after that state, you would do render that particular button. So that will be more of a conditional thing based on some state, and those state you are setting as a true only on a component mount.
Okay, so we show the static HTML and then the interactive things we load later. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. So even you can do some skeleton thing here, like on the server rendered page for that particular part where you need some interactivity, render those of skeleton loaders, and on a component did mount make like a set of flag and actually render those components.
Okay, okay.
That can also be one of the disadvantage of SSR, where for some pages it's working fine, like that's what the marketing team needs or the team needs, but for some pages it's showing up something but it's not interactive yet, and to solve that thing, again have to go and send shimmers from the backend. Matlab, you have to send the placeholders from the backend, and until the client side code doesn't download or the render doesn't happen, so it's non-interactive, and once it's rendered completely, then only the user can interact. So that's having these kind of mixed, giving this mixed kind of configuration to server-side rendering becomes difficult.
Yeah, yeah, and that orchestration becomes a little bit hard. Okay, we are already late from our timings. So okay, we'll just touch upon the last part, how why streaming is required for rendering a huge pages from a server side, and what are the different ways and how it works. Okay, we will probably not discuss about the different strategies to implement SSR, that is a big topic on itself. So what is streaming?
Streaming is, I think in general sense, it's like a constant fetching.
Oh, sorry, it got
auto
loud
discuss
from here.
because of time.
Okay, everyone is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The call got disconnected. Yeah.
Okay.
What just happened?
Here it got disconnected. So I don't know why. But I'm not sure if the recording would be proper now. Okay, anyway. Yeah. So can I note who is?
Someone needs to mute.
I think Ekam needs to mute.
Okay, Ekam.
And you're not sharing the screen.
Okay. So this one.
Yeah. Oh, we are back.
Okay. So like earlier, there used to be only one way to do server-side rendering, like generate whole HTML on the server side and then push it on the client side. So it used to happen through render to string, what we saw here. But it also has an API where instead of rendering it as a string, you can render it as a node stream. So you just say render to node stream, and then this would probably be like a it returns a stream stream data, and that you pipe the response. So this enables. Okay. By the way, there is a misconception which people think with render to node stream is like the rendering happen chunk by chunk. Like your one component rendering will happen and then the other will happen, but that's not the case. So your virtual DOM tree that is generated synchronously, and converting this virtual DOM tree to those streams, stream chunks, that happens like a chunk by chunk. So, but the whole component rendering will happen synchronously. And I'm not even sure like React loadable and those things works very well with
I don't think, I haven't tried. Because I mean, I am also not sure about the part about how would you handle caching of your pages when you have streaming in your flow. So let's say if you were caching your whole page, your whole response or a markup. So usually people tend to cache the HTML pages. So we used to cache the HTML pages in our Redis, right? So now with streaming, I'm not sure how Redis would work along. So people have created certain solutions around it, saying that how do you stream your response and how do you put something in your cache, but I haven't really tried it.
But most of the time you don't cache your server rendered page.
I mean, we
Is it,
do.
you do?
We used to do. I mean, at Trevo, we used to do. Because again, if most of the time the server rendered pages, the content, most of the content used to be like kind of static, not really static, but it's basically, let's say, landing pages. So we used to cache those.
Again, those are more of a browser thing, right? So the caching happen on a disk cache
No,
level.
no, no, no. So I'm saying we used to cache the HTML on the inside the Redis.
Oh.
So let's say you say hotels in Bangalore. So if we used to check whether the string for that particular time, so we used to have a refreshed intervals. So for 3 hours we used to cache it because the content on that page really didn't change. And we the only thing which was dynamic for, let's say, a listing page was pricing. Rest apart from that, things were mostly static. So the pricing, we never used to make a pricing call on our servers. So it's basically things apart from that used to, since it was just a HTML, we just to dump it in the Redis cache.
We also used to do the same with Kubo.
Yeah.
I don't think in that case stream would work.
Yeah, because if your chunks are getting streamed out, how would you cache it? Like, how would you map it back? So, but there are again, there are solutions implemented. I haven't tried them really. So it's basically you stream your responses to Redis, and somehow Redis also kind of maintains a queue kind of a thing. And when you say your stream ends, it will just combine them and then put it in your cache.
Put it as a cache, and then on the next one,
you just see a markup.
Yeah.
So on the next one, you already have the markup ready.
No, but the streaming thing, we also solve that, right? Like the browsers thing, what we are serving, instead of sending a big chunk of HTML, we are now serving piece by piece thing. So that part, I'm not sure still it would be.
Yeah, so you really don't need it, because the reason why we use streaming is basically because when you're generating your HTML response for the first time, right? All your meta tags, all your initial data set are still in fetch. These are all still in synchronous operation. Okay. But once you have the markup ready, that's all you need, right?
Yeah,
so in Redis, you store the whole markup. So next time when a request comes in, you first do a check. It's basically a express middleware that it goes to your Redis cache. It checks whether this request already exists in the cache. If yes, just serve it. Else you go to the streaming process. Because once the markup is ready, you don't really need the streaming. The reason we need streaming is basically we don't want the user to be blocked until the whole page is generated. But over here, we have the whole markup ready and we just push it.
Yeah.
So there is another part of streaming where let's say we are generating a page, and somehow if we can just tell about dependency before we are trying to render something, so we can stream the head component, or a better option would be like just send a request header, response header. So and you can give a hint of what things you want to load using those preload headers. With that, what you can do is like you, while your server is generating HTML, you can start fetching resources on the client side.
Sure.
So the same thing for the head elements, like you somehow like you can do response.write head, and then you do stream other part of your application.
And then you say stream.end.
And then you said say stream.end. I'm not sure if this stream.pipe does that, but yeah, I have not used. Anyone has used render to node stream?
I have not used.
I also haven't.
Not used.
So I have a question, like when we say huge pages, it might be a dumb question, but what we call a huge page, like with lot of requests or with lot of data, or like, for example, Kamlesh gave an example of shoes page, which may have 2000 list entries and it doesn't have pagination. So would that be eligible for this particular use case? Any practical example?
Yeah, so it's basically how much of your pages part are dynamic. because for dynamic things, you need to do some sort of process on your server, right? Now
Correct.
doing
Yeah.
all those process, since it's a synchronous thing, right? So until everything is requested, if you don't have the stream, your users would wait for the whole page to be generated and then get the whole HTML markup.
Right.
Versus
Okay.
if you kind of, it's basically a chunking of your processes on your server. You're basically telling your server that, whatever chunks you are prepared, give me those chunks, I'll just stream it to the browser.
Okay. So when, let's say, I have a DOM which is pretty big and only partial is being sent at once. So at any point, wouldn't doesn't it has a possibility to make DOM invalid because of maybe partially it has gone to the client? So
the DOM, when you're streaming a DOM, right? In that time, I actually console logged how those stream chunks look like.
Okay.
And those stream chunks, a lot of stream chunks doesn't have a proper closing tags because those are a part of a different chunk. Now, while you're rendering it, a browser can start showing that it will not autocorrect if you are streaming it. That's what my assumption is. I'm not haven't seen that.
Yeah, generally HTML is forgiving as well if there are some.
HTML is forgiving, but I think if you are missing some closing tags while you are streaming, the browser knows that you are streaming this, so it's okay to create a DOM object out of those elements, but don't yet create a closing tag by itself.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And also, I feel like if you are doing rendering a very big page from a server side, there is that's a place where you should optimize. You shouldn't render a big page from your server side at all. You should only render above the fold application. And even I saw that when I did render to node stream, the chunk was different only when it used to cross a certain threshold. So for a small page, all the content was going on a single chunk, single stream chunk.
Okay.
So most of time, it would not make a lot of difference, I guess. The only good place I can see this is if you can somehow send the resource in beforehand while the server is rendering the page, that would be the best thing to optimize.
So one idea just got he just told there can be a chance of DOM invalidated because of the streaming. So what we can do is when we will once the thing is streaming, we will we will build the DOM, but we won't render it. Only when the streaming is complete, we will render it. The processing will be done, and if in that case somehow the DOM gets invalid, so the entire stream gets invalidated and it again starts from the beginning.
But yes, I think the point of streaming is to show whatever we have to the user as of now and incrementally load it.
So I guess a browser have this thing, a browser knows when you are streaming, so it does support because anyway, see, the browser handle your HTML chunk by chunk, right? Converting a HTML string to a DOM object, it doesn't happen all at once. So you add a div element, and then it will create a DOM object or CSS DOM object for that. So I feel with a streaming case as well, that can happen. Browser will not try to attach those closing tags. It's an assumption. It's a theory. I'm not very sure. I have to check that part. Anything else you guys want to put, because we are already 2 hours, and we have almost covered all the part except the implementations of SSR. But yeah, Any quick questions or last minute questions you guys have?
I guess mostly everything was a discussion. So
I just
Yeah.
want to I want to ask one question. What if browsers becomes very fast and it's very something in the future, so we never need to talk about server side rendering at all, you know
Rust.
and what if Google change its policy of how it crawls your websites,
I
then
would wait. I would wait for that era to come.
I think that Rust is already trying to do that.
yeah.
C++ and they're having WebAssembly to do that thing.
But a server side rendering
Yeah.
is not just the rendering of thing; it's more of
Yeah.
a orchestration of loading.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of improvements and work is being going on in this field. How Google actually crawls and things like that. Then might be we'll not have to check about SEO part of it, but other parts of it. But I
Yeah,
think
so the SEO part probably would go logically, but the perceived experience
yeah,
might, on some cases, you might be needing
Yeah.
that. But I think nowadays a lot of people are moving toward the skeleton architecture. So
Yeah.
it looks good. Sometimes it doesn't look good. Sometimes it's very
it depends on a
subjective. Yeah, it's very subjective there. But again, I'm just waiting for that day, because server side rendering was something which was being used 10 years back, or then it again came back with this SEO thing. It's
Yeah.
still with us when we are very happy with our single page applications. Still it is with us. I'm just waiting for that day when it goes away and we don't have to worry about it all, because
I think that with WebAssembly, we are already trying to do that because we are trying to implement C and C++ natively, which is really fast. But after we get DOM access with WebAssembly, which is not foreseeable in near future, I think that if we are able to get some DOM access with WebAssembly, then I think that would be happening what Anil said.
No, but it's not just about the fast or usability, right? It's basically how you are improving your perceived experience, and also your SEO crawlers need to be very much updated about. It has to be client side aware. That's it. It's not really about WebAssembly or C++. It's basically mostly how you deal with your perceived experience, because your WebAssembly and everything would be still part of your browser, right? What we are trying to optimize is what a user can see as soon as possible.
And I think the next phase of improving this SSR and whole thing would be probably how you can partially hydrate,
Yeah.
and how you can even do this. Uh, Both client and server should work together.
I mean, so the SSR has to, again, the developer experience of the SSR has to be improved by the framework itself.
yes, yeah,
Because right now we are like, let's say you can't use React Lazy, you can't use Suspense. If you have code splitting, you have to use some other third-party library, right? So if things are like kind of baked in the framework, then I guess we don't have to maintain all these things.
Yeah.
Because right now, even if you look at the tree, right, the client and the server tree, your app is common, but the providers are different. Because let's say even if you use Helmet, you need to use a different Helmet instance on your client versus your server, because the way it works is different.
Or
In your Redux provider.
so someone might like a powerful compiler, which will compile to be supported on like the server side.
a lot of ideas. Someone can make it.
Yeah, actually, the whole thing is moving toward a little bit this compiler thing. Whatever you can do on a compiler level, do that.
Yeah, I guess Svelte is promoting it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Right.
I think this was helpful. Not yes, organizer. Student tell.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Thank you for holding this meeting. Yeah. Thank you.
Chalo, thanks.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good
Yep.
weekend.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
your
See
weekend.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot for the session, guys.
Thanks.